Holding. We are holding in middle of page, through the top page, Tzadik Imam Dalef, 93A. Omer Rabbi Yochanan, my Dechsiv Risi Alayla. Okay, so let's get to here. Okay, so this is quoting Pasuk. We're continuing with Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. That it says that different people said different things. They asked, the people were other Jews were told, how is it that you were mishtachel at Selim when you have such tzaddik, a God that protects people like Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. So from here we see that the Jewish people, hey Barbara, the Jewish people were actually, Simon Shuki that we're starting, that the Jewish people were actually bowing to the idols, and the only ones that weren't bowing was Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. So that's the reason why Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah were singled out to be thrown into the furnace, because they were the only ones, or from the only ones that weren't bowing down to the idol. So now the Gemorah continues. Rabbi Yochanan says, "By dechsiv, what does it mean that it says for?" It is a pasuk in Zechariah. It says, "Re'isi halayla v'hini ish reichev al sus adom." I was looking at night, and I see the man riding on a red horse. V'oimed ben hadassim, he stands amongst the hadassim, the willows. Asher b'mitzula, which is, we'll see what mitzula means in a second. V'achrav susim adumim shirukim levanim, and after the red horses was, we're going to see shrukim is hey shukim on page 93a, is gray and white horses. So this is a vision Yecheskel sees. What does this mean? And what does obviously have to do with our Gemorah here about Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah? So the Gemorah says like this. So, my re'isi b'layla, what does it mean I saw by night? God at that moment was very upset. This is when the Jewish people served the idols. The same idols, were served the idol of Nebuchadnezzar, the same one that Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah would not bow down to. So it says Hashem wanted to turn the whole world into night, meaning to destroy the world. Hey Judy, to destroy the world. Let's see if I'm going to try to learn as much Rashi as we can. Let's make sure I have it in front of me. Okay, so like Rashi says, this is a pasuk in Zechariah, call them kula laila that because they bowed down to the idol, therefore God wanted to turn the whole world into night, which means to destroy the world in some sort of way. So what does it mean man was riding a red horse? Ein ish ela elokim, that referring to God. How do we know? So when it says ish in the Torah, it's referring to Hashem. So Hashem is like riding a red horse. And it says, hi Ariel, it says that Hashem ish mechama, Hashem shemai. Asus adam, what does it mean a red horse? So so red signifies blood, and Hashem wanted to turn the whole world to blood. When he saw the righteousness of Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, that they were not bow, they were ready to be thrown into the furnace and not to bow to the idol. Niskara daitoi, his mind, so to say, calmed down, from the word cool down. Shnemer, that's what it means. The pasuk continues. The pasuk describes in one verse all the happenings of the time, meaning to say the pasuk quotes that ish reichev al sus adaim is the anger of Hashem to turn the world into blood. Oimed ben hadassim is already. So what's it say? Oimed ben hadassim. The pasuk says he's standing amongst the willows. That is, then he already calmed down. Who's the hadassim? The dasim are Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, like we'll see in a second. Asher b'mitzula vein dasim el tzadikim. Tzaddik, the dasim refers to tzaddikim. How do we know that hadasim is referring to tzaddikim? Because we learned about Esther in the Megillah. It says vahi oimen es hadasa. Esther Mordechai. Esther is referred to as hadasa, which means a tzaddik. So too it refers to the other Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, tzaddikim. So he's standing already amongst the tzaddikim. So niskara daite, so his mind calms down. And where is Mitzula? So Rashi says, the Gemara says, "Ei Mitzula le Bavel," and Mitzula means Babylonia, which is where this story happened. That God is tells Tzula, which is referring to Bavel, he's going to dry up the rivers. So what happened? So the pasuk continues. The Gemara doesn't quote the full pasuk, but the Gemara, the pasuk in Zachariah, like we read before, says "V'achar susim adum shrukim." So it's what does it mean shrukim? So the Gemara says the miyad milei reges. It doesn't say who, but we're assuming milei reges means the adversary voices that came to give criticism to the Jewish people in front of Hashem. They got upset. Nasim shrukim. They became pale. They paled to like gray. Va'adumim nasilveinim, and the red turned white. Meaning Hashem went from red, which would be angry, to blood, to white, like chesed. White, we know, is chesed, to kindness, to transform his emotion from wanting to destroy the Jewish people. Not. So meaning that b'schus, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, at that moment when the Jewish people were all bowing to the tzelem of Nebuchadnezzar. So this, because of Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, Rabbi Yechanan says, that's what Zechariah sees. So it's an amazing thing. If you think about it, there's one pasuk. It seems like the pasuk is just saying one vision, but the pasuk is actually going through an entire thought process. But first, Hashem was upset, and in his anger, he wanted to destroy the world. Therefore, the horse was red. When he saw Hananiah, the Hadassim, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah in the Metzula, so Hashem had Rachmanis, and he didn't. The adversary angels were angry. They changed that pale gray, and the horse turned it to white. So you see the Rashis. So who Aimed ben Hadassim, so it says, Rashi says, that God held himself up in the merit of the Hadassim, which were in the Metzula. And like he says, what's the Metzula? How do we know the Metzula is the Hadassim again is Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah? It says, L'tula charbi lebavel sheyesh Metzula charbi lashin chavra mayim, that the waters should dry up. So we see Metzula is talking about Bavel. So he says, Shrukim. What is shrukim? So Rashi says, Tzevuim v'achach nasim levanim kishtakal b'tzadikim noach mikasei. So it was first colored, and then it turned white when Hashem saw the tzadikim and his noach, his anger calmed. Okay, so the Gemara continues now. So it says, Amar Papa, from this interpretation of the pasuk, I mean, the pasuk was here before. But once Rabbi Yechanan describes to us the meaning of the pasuk of Zechariah, so now Rav Papa says, Rav Papa says, Shema Mina, from this the interpretation of the pasuk, now we can understand what it means. Susa chiyura b'malei lechalma. That Susa chiyura, Rashi says that a white horse is a good thing in a dream. If you dream about a white horse, it's a good omen, it's a good sign. Like he said, Rashi says, and the very fact that we see the blood, the red was, the Gemara says is blood, and then it turned white. So from here we see clearly that the white is a positive thing. And it says over here, it brings down the Masha says, also Hadassim, just a small point of we're now still in the tail end of Sukkot. Hadassim, everyone knows, has how many leaves? Has three leaves. So the three leaves represent Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. That's why Hadassim is referred to, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah referred to Hadassim, and also like it quotes the Gemara Megillah. Those who don't know Gemorah, that Esther Shema Lama Nikra Shema Hadasa, which she's called Esther. Why do they call her Hadasa? Because Tzadikim are called Hadassim, and it says V'oimid ben Hadassim, which means to say it's interesting that the pasuk goes circular. From the Gemara in Megillah learns V'oimid ben Hadassim, that Hadassim means Tzadikim, and therefore Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah means Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. Our Gemara learns it from Esther. It goes kind of full circle that Esther was a tzaddikus and they were tzaddikim, and the very fact that they're all called Hadassim, once the God calls them Hadassim, we know from Esther that it means tzaddikim, and then that's why Esther was called Hadas, because she was a tzaddikus. He also says, he brings down that also that the idea is it wasn't just that Hashem turned white, meaning to say his anger turned white, but also it's like the process that happens in Yom Kippur, when the red string turns into white, when they throw the Sa'ir L'Azazel down, so too Hashem, the sins that the Jewish people do, was forgiven by the tzaddikim. That's why it says that the death of a tzaddik, we learn, is compared to the breaking of the luchas, which was also as a kapara, as an atonement for the Jewish people. He says, he answers, what's the Shema Mina? So the Marsha says, a good question. Rav Papa learns from Rabbi Yochanan, Shema Mina, from this we learn that if someone has a dream of a white horse, it's a good omen, it's a good sign. Why is that? What's a dream have to do with the pasuk in Zechariah? So the Marsha explains, Shekivan shiyafahu b'nevuah. If in prophecy it's a good thing, Yafu gam lechalam. Then it's also good for a dream. Why? So here's an interesting thing. The Maharsha says, "Sharei chaloim echad mishishim nevuahu." A chalom, a dream, is 1/60th of prophecy. 1/60th. The 1/60th of prophecy is in a dream, and because if in a prophecy a white horse is a positive sign, so too if a person dreams of a white horse is also a positive sign. Okay, let's go back to the Gemara. The Gemara is like this: where the 2 dots, 4 lines from the wide lines. So the Gemara says Rabbanan over here means the Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. It's not usually when the Gemara says Rabbanan, it means as if there's an argument here. So Rabbanan Leichen Ozlu, where did they go? Where did Hananiah and Mishael? We don't learn about them. They show up in literature once in one story. So what happened to them? Leichen Ozlu, where'd they go? So here we have a difference of opinions. Amar Rav says Ba'ayin Haramesu. A big miracle happened to them, and the miracle affected Ayin Hara, which is interesting because there's a whole way one believes in Ayin Haras or not. But here he says, Rav says, Ba'ayin Hara Mesu, they had an evil eye towards them, and that caused them to die. So they didn't live long after that story. There's commentaries who explain that the Marshat's one who explains. It's not just that the Gemara says, why don't we know about them? The Nebuchadnezzar was we learned before, I'm going to see in stories coming, if we get a little further down, Nebuchadnezzar wasn't just a prastagoy. He was a prastagoy. They call him Ma'aser Rasha, but he had a spiritual sensitive side to him. We already learned that last week. So just like Nebuchadnezzar, we're going to learn serve Daniel. When he saw the miracle of Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, the Mashal says he would have immediately appointed them to a position of importance. And in that position of importance, like Nehemiah and Ezra, all those people that had positions of importance under the Babylonians or the Persians, they would have surfaced under some sort of story later on. And the very fact that he didn't do that means they weren't around. So the Rav says they died in Ayin Hara, they died in an evil eye. Shmuel disagrees, says Bereik Tavu. Similar, but it's a different idea. They drowned in the spit. What was the spit? It's when the Goyim said, the nation said to the Jewish people, that you have such a God. Why did you guys bow down to an idol? So that also brought a negativity to the Jewish people, and because of that, they drowned in that spit. So Rashi says, what does that mean? So first Rashi says again, they're not mentioned anymore in scripture. So why don't they show up anymore? So Rav says, "Ba'ayin Hara Mesu, they died with an evil eye." That they had a completion, so they had an evil eye in them. That they drowned in the spit. It's a form of Ayin Hara. I'm not sure exactly the difference between that. It says the Mashal says it's a mashal. It says Sha'idei Shayu Anachrim Reikikim Mevaishim Es Yisrael Al Ma'asazel Lechein Meisu K'dei Shlo Yisvaishim Oid Yisrael. The difference is according to Rav Ayin Hara means people looked at them in the negative way because of their what was so worthy about them that they walked out from a fire like that. And the Marsha says that the Shmuel says that they drowned in the spit, that they didn't want to live anymore because they were causing the Jews, they were giving a bad name to the Jewish people. Their righteousness was a reflection of the negativity of everyone else who did bow to the Tzelem. So although that they caused Hashem, it's a kind of poetic justice over here. Interesting idea that they're the reason why. It means it wasn't just that Hashem looked at them and made a miracle for them. From Zechariah we learn that Hashem had intention to punish everyone, to punish all the Jews, and only because of them, Oimid ben Hadassim, because of Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, he went from a red horse to a white horse. It means he didn't punish the Jewish people. And at the same time, they're Tavu Baroik, because the guy looked at the Jews and said, why were you bowing to the idols if Hananiah, Mishael, you have such a great God? So it reflected bad on the Jewish people. So that bad reflection, they died. So they ended up saving the Jewish people and dying for the same reason, which is interesting. So it says they died. Tavu Baraik, they died in the spit of the Goyim. Yeshua, Rabbi Yechanan says no, they didn't die, not from Ayin Hara, not from the Reik, but they basically, for the similar idea, basically, they didn't want to be around anymore. It says all the Eretz Yisrael, they went back to Eretz Yisrael. Benosu Nashim, they married women, and they had daughters and sons. Okay, and now now we see this. It's machlekes. First of all, from this we see, and we're going to see from other places, we see that again, I'm not just from what I'm getting from the in between the lines of the Gemorah. It's not mashma. It doesn't seem that when Nebuchadnezzar exiled the Jewish people in the first Churban, that it was forbidden for the Jews to as individuals to go back to Eretz Yisrael. Means en masse, obviously, they couldn't set up a kingdom that they had to wait till Koresh gave permission, whatever the different levels of permission they got under Zerubbabel and then under Nehemiah and Ezra. But for individuals to go as a Yachid, to go as an individual to Eretz Yisrael, like we saw what happened after Rome. Means after Rome, there was never an establishment of a Jewish government until 1948. But the Jewish people always lived there individually under their own under the governments that were there and under their own what they wanted to if it worked for them. So he says that they went back. Rabbi Yochanan says they went back to Yisrael and they had sons and daughters. And he says, Kitanoi, this is a machlekes, that this same argument of Rav, Shmuel, and Rabbi Yochanan, which incidentally are all three pillars of the Talmud Bavli and Yerushalmi, right? Rav and Shmuel with Talmidim of Rebbe and started the yeshivas, which started the Gemorah Talmud Bavli. Rabbi Yochanan is the pillar of Talmud Yerushalmi. So these are the pillars of the whole Talmud. And then this argument. So it says, Kitanoi. This is an argument like this argument between these three is like other three Tanoim before them. It says, Rabbi Azariah, Ba'ayin Haramesu, they died in the evil eye, meaning to say again that the evil eye is that people said, what's so great? You know what? Wow, you're such a tzaddik, you don't want to be called a tzaddik. It's not a good thing. They drowned in the spit, meaning of that it reflected bad on the Jewish people. Like Rabbi Yochanan and all the Eretz Yisrael, they went up to Eretz Yisrael, they made an aliyah, v'nosu nashim, they married women, and they had men and daughters and sons. Now, again, why do we have to, obviously, why do we have to say exactly that they had daughters and sons? Because he quotes a pasuk, Shnemar, and it's interesting. I never understood. This is a pasuk in Zachariah, right? So everyone knows, but I think it's twice a year. The Bali Kodesh, we know better. Twice a year, I think we read the Nevi'as of Zachariah. Once I think is in Bahaloscha, and once is in Chanukah of Yeshua Kohen Gadol. Right? Yeshua Kohen Gadol is the Kohen Gadol in the time of the Churban, it seems like, or in the time of the Churban, or when they came back. It's not clear when he's Kohen Gadol, but I think he's either the Kohen Gadol before. It seems like either in the Churban or when he came back with Zerubbabel. But he's Yeshua Kohen Gadol. He says, because the prophecy in Zechariah is about Zerubbabel, that it says, Shimona Yeshua Kohen Gadol, HaKohen Gadol, Atavri Echa HaYoyishvim Lefanecha, you and your fellows, Ki Anshe Moifeseim, were the peoples of miracles. Who's the peoples of miracles that were with Yeshua Kohen Gadol, seemingly both in Bavel and Eretz Yisrael? We're going to see in a second, they wrote, Yeshua Kohen Gadol was also in Bavel. So I'm not sure where he was sitting with, but they're using this as an example to show that he went to Eretz Yisrael, that they went to Eretz Yisrael, because Yeshua Kohen Gadol seemingly went to Eretz Yisrael with Zerubbabel. Anshe Moifesema, the peoples of wonders. Ezu Anshe Shnas Moifes, who are the people that was made of wonder? This is Chanam Mishael Azariah. So from here, Rashi says, Al Machazru Eretz Yisrael, Eitz Yeshua Kohen Gadol. They went back to Yeshua Kohen Gadol. So in Zechariah's prophecy that we read about in the Haftarah of Chanukah and Pa'aloscha, it says Shimuna Yeshua Kohen Gadol. So in there, it's a rebuke that actually we're going to learn in a second that Yeshua Kohen Gadol was also thrown into a furnace, in a separate furnace. We know about the miracle, but there was the not such a miracle, which is we're going to learn in a second. He went in. He had a miracle, but not on the level of Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, because his clothing were burnt. And part of the rebuke was in the prophecy of Zechariah that we're going to learn his children married out of the faith. They married non-Jews. Okay, so just now the Gemara continues. Like he said, Rashi says over here, he brings down the Marsha says on the prophecy of Hanan, Mishael, Azariah to Yeshua Kohen Gadol. God tells Yeshua the Kohen Gadol. It was a rebuke that they are peoples of wonder. They didn't get damaged in the furnace. That the only reason that they were thrown into the furnace that this turned out to be a miracle. You weren't part of the miracle. Al-Machmas Oynish. You shouldn't. So basically, Hashem was saying, we're going to learn in a second, Yeshua Kohen Gadol was also thrown into furnace, but it wasn't as a way to make a miracle, it was actually as a way of a punishment. Although he himself wasn't harmed, but his clothing were burnt. Al-Machmas Oynish al-Shenasu b'necha nashim she'enim huganes l'kahuna, because he married, his children either married non-Jews or they married beneath them women that were not, they shouldn't have been married to if as being Kohanim. Okay, I'm not sure. Again, one has to study. Maybe someone has any commentaries or insight from that they know on their own. If Yeshua Kohen Gadol ever was a real Kohen Gadol, meaning to say, if he actually served as a Kohen Gadol, or he just came down as the Kohen Gadol for Zerubbabel, which is about 50 years after the Churban, or if he was maybe an old man and he was a Kohen Gadol in the first temple. All right. So now the Gemara addresses. If anyone has any insight, please pop in. Don't let me hold you back. So the Gemara now asks about Daniel, because Daniel was also part of this whole chevra, and why was he all of a sudden absent in this whole story? Like all of a sudden, he's around up until a point, and then his friends are thrown into the furnace, and he's missing. What happened to him? So the Gemara says, "The Daniel heichel. Where did Daniel go when they were thrown into the furnace?" So Amarav l'michra nahar rab b'Tveria. He went to go create, like Rashi says, a big nahar, lahitzi nahar b'Tveria. I'm not sure if that is because we have the Jordan. Anyone who has a little familiar with Eretz Yisrael a bit, the Tveria, the Kinneret, which is in Tveria, is fed by the northern waters that come from the Golan and Lebanon, mainly from the Banyas spring, right? It's the falls. So I'm not sure if he was connecting that, or because after that, then the Kinneret flows out south towards the Dead Sea. That's the Jordan River. The Jordan River obviously was there before the Jews crossed the Yarden. So I'm not sure what it means that he made streams separate from that water stream going from the north to the south. But it says Lahoitzi Nahar b'Tveria, to make a Nahar in Tveria. I'm not just exactly sure where this Nahar was, or he just maybe there was drying out. So it says over here it says Lachsev Bahar Nahar Godol, in the mountain a big river. And he went to from the springs. So it could be it was through the Banyas, but we'd have to assume that even in the times before Daniel, in the times that the Banyas was feeding the Kinneret has to have a water source. Maybe he went to add to that. But Kokach Lama, he said he went to go build from the mountains to bring the spring waters down. But Kokach Lama, why did he do it? The Yavit says that he went to wait for Nebuchadnezzar to calm down, so he found himself a mission and kept himself busy. Maybe he was scared we're going to see soon, he was scared that he would also be affected by the anger of what happened then in the story of Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. And the other opinion says that the Yavit says that the waters in the Kinneret became bad, and they didn't have drinking water, so he fixed the water system that they should be able to drink. But clearly he went to like Rashi says, L'machar nahar b'tura dinar. He came to Rashi brings two ideas. To one is lahaitzi nahar b'Tveria, to bring out a river, or to create another water source from the mountain. Obviously, maybe to purify the waters that became impure in the Kinneret, seemingly. Okay, but whatever it was, he went to go to be be away. So that's what he kept himself busy with. Shmuel Amar la'asi bizre despasta. He went to go find. He was sent actually on a mission from Nebuchadnezzar to go bring back aspasta, which is animal feed, because Israel, the Golan till today, is a source of aspasta for animal feed for. So those who live in Seattle know that in eastern Washington, after the Snoqualmie Pass, is one of the main sources of the world of aspasta. So he went to they sent it all over to China, to the Middle East. So even then they needed it. So Nebuchadnezzar sent him to go bring it. It says Lehavi zera shel Esav shumarchel be'ema shochan Nebuchadnezzar is hachi havakem lu. That's what the tradition was, that he went to go bring his fasta from Israel from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. Rabbi Yechon says So again, this is Rav Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, "Asuya chazir d'Alexandria Shem Mitzrayim." He went to go bring the special pigs that were from Egypt, from Alexandria of Egypt. Obviously, it wasn't called Alexandria at the time, Alexandria of Egypt. And the Gemara says, "Eini." The reason I say that is because obviously Alexandria only happened after Alexander the Great, which was after Nebuchadnezzar. He says, "Eini." It can't be that he went, according to Rabbi Yochanan, to bring these pigs. Why? By Tani, we learn that Turdus Araifa, Turdus, you have sometimes the famous doctor, right? So Turdus obviously was Turdus Araifa. He was a famed doctor that was trusted by the Chacham. It means his knowledge in medicine helped the Chacham determine halachas. So he said that Turdus Araifa Amar ein paraf echazir yeis machzanju shom Mitzrayim she'ein chaytchin me'em shela, that the Egyptians would cut out the womb of the cows and the pigs, so they shouldn't breed outside of Egypt. So they wouldn't allow people to breed them. So they made them unusable for breeding. So the reason why we need Turdus Araifa to tell us this is because the Chacham wanted to know if that was a mum, if that was a blemish that you can't use it as a korban, the cows. So you shouldn't be able to breed with them. So Zutri Isis, so the Gemara says no, he brought back young ones, without them knowing. Rashi says without them knowing. There's a different opinion, meaning that they didn't know that he was able to smuggle them out, or if he didn't know because they didn't think that they didn't bother to cut out the wombs and young ones because they didn't think that they were taking young pigs and cows to breed so young. So basically, they didn't ruin it, but it was the Nebuchadnezzar wanted them to breed in Bavel. And why did he do all these things? Is also so he should keep himself busy. Rashi says that the Egyptian pigs are very big and obviously good. So the Gemara says, how could you say that that according to the Chacham who felt that was a treifa, made it disqualified? You could not for korban, sorry for treifa. That it wasn't, they can't eat it as a food, as they can't eat the cows from Egypt. So Turda said that they took it out, but they can live still. It says va'ena part of Chazir and Yaitz Mitzrayim Kadesh La Yu Mitzrayim Mitzuyim B'Mekom Sachein V'Af B'Kein Chayu till today, right? The Chinese guard the panda bear, so they have different animals, or the Japanese try to the beef. So there's different places that want to keep their unique animals to themselves. So the Egyptians back then weren't any different, and they didn't want people breeding their quality animals outside of Egypt. It was bad for business. So the Gemara answers, Zutri Aisniu libam delipariv riva. So Rashi says that because they were small, they didn't bother cutting out the room because they didn't figure that such young ones were used for breeding. Maybe they thought they wanted to eat them. Let them take him out without cutting out the womb. Obviously, the question that the Achronim asked is, the Pashat question was, Nebuchadnezzar, everyone knows the Haftarah of Parshas Ve'era and Boy. Nebuchadnezzar conquered Egypt. So why would Nebuchadnezzar be concerned with what the Egyptians' custom from Alexandria was, not to export Egyptian pigs? Nebuchadnezzar was in charge; he could do whatever he wanted. So it says that he didn't. It says he didn't want to do it. It looks like he didn't want to show himself as the king's messenger. Nebuchadnezzar himself didn't want to do this as an act of strength. So he, in diplomacy, obviously, even those days, we have to be smart in every situation. What is the best approach? Okay, now the Gemara says like this. The Gemara says that Tan Rabbanan, interesting Gemara. So what do we see from here? We asked the question, where was Daniel, right? Where was Daniel in this whole story? So they went to go punkt, like they say, at the exact time when Nebuchadnezzar was having everyone bow down to the Tzelem, and Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah didn't. And it's obviously a time of commotion. And that's exactly when Daniel had nothing better to do than to go dig a river in Tveria, to go deal with the spasta, to go deal with pigs that are needed from Egypt. So the Gemara says like this: Taner Rabbanan Shleisha Hayu Ba'isa Eitza. There was three entities, let's say, that were part of this idea that Daniel shouldn't be around then. It worked for everyone. Who's the three? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Daniel, and Nebuchadnezzar. No one wanted Daniel to be there. Not God, not Daniel himself, and not Nebuchadnezzar. He knew that he needed to take an act of strength. Everything about Nebuchadnezzar, we know from the Gemara Shabbos, Nebuchadnezzar, with all due respect for his sensitivity of spirituality, he was an extremely harsh ruler. He was harsh to his own generals. The Gemara Shabbos tells us he abused them as well, and he was also very calculated in how to keep control and how to keep rule. So obviously he knew what he was doing. It wasn't just about bowing to an idol because he wanted to be idolized, but it was also a way of shlita, to be ruling over them, and therefore he knew that things are about to get complicated, and he wanted Daniel out. So he also wanted Daniel out. Daniel didn't want to be there, of course. Why would he want to? And even God didn't want Daniel to be there. So he says, Daniel, like Rashi says. So where is the three? So he says, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Daniel Kadosh Baruch Hu, Kadosh Baruch Hu said, Nezel Daniel mihacha delay lemru b'schusa inatzil, that Hashem didn't want that Daniel should be connected in any way to the miracle of Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. That he shouldn't say, oh, it wasn't that they were really worthy. It says they were friends with Daniel, right? So because remember, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah they weren't just people that he picked off the street. They were people that they were brought in as servants to the king. He knew them very wise. Even the whole story that they only kept kosher. So they were part of Daniel's crew. So they didn't want Daniel to take credit for it. God wanted it to be their miracle. So he says the next one is, so Daniel Amar. Daniel also didn't want to be there. He says, he was scared that in the moment of that Daniel was worshipped by Nebuchadnezzar. Again, in the complex personality of Nebuchadnezzar, he worshipped Daniel, and so therefore he was scared that in the moment, we're going to see Rashi that they would burn him, as it says that the idols of the nations have to be burnt. He says. Rashi says the Nebuchadnezzar Nebuchadnezzar made Daniel into a god. Daniel is he was scared that they were going to throw him into the fire as burning one of their idols because he was sagid. He would bow to him as a god. And why? Because Daniel was very righteous and very wise and very he depended on Daniel. So again, part of his control is to turn him into a god, as opposed to, it's a control thing. It's all. Nebuchadnezzar is very, very, very clever, very focused, and that's why he's also able to. The Gemara tells us that he even acknowledged Hashem. He said he took 3 steps for Hashem's honor. He understood power in this. He understood the way things have to be, and he understood that in order to keep things the way you want them to be, you have to have a strategy. You can't show weakness in anything. So if Daniel exists, he's a god. Better him be a god than him be a competition. So he says, so that's why he didn't want to be there. That's why Daniel didn't want to be there. When Nebuchadnezzar says, Yazal Daniel mihacha, that he says, let Daniel get away from here. He didn't want Daniel to be. I'm trying to get the translation exactly. Hold on. He says, says like this. So Nebuchadnezzar says, Yazal Daniel miachadoi lemru kalaya lelekai benoira, that Nebuchadnezzar says that Daniel should go away from here so that the people will not say Nebuchadnezzar burnt his god on fire. So he didn't want to burn his god. He would have to throw Daniel in also. Daniel didn't want to be burnt because it says that the idols should be burnt. And Nebuchadnezzar didn't want to have to burn him. So he says that he's burning his god. So he better he's not around in this whole exercise. But how do we know he served them as a god? How do we know that the sagid loy that he bowed to him? It says that the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel. and commanded that they should offer an offering and a pleasing aroma to him. So it wasn't just he bowed to him; he actually offered offers to him, sacrifices to him. But it was it was like it was a god that he owned. The god had to rule, the god had to be under his terms. His god had to be under his terms. If he really treated him as a god and as a power, he would have treated him and his family differently, and the Jewish people differently. It was a kind of a god that was his captive. One of his slaves was a god. So again, is an interesting person. Okay, let's go a little further. The Gemara says like this. We'll go a little further, a few more minutes. There's another story. Story is there's two fellows called Achav ben Kulia and Tzidkaya ben Maiseha. So it says like this. The pasuk says Kayam Hashem. Where's 11? 11 is in Yirmiyahu. Kaya says, I'm going to read the whole verse. Kayam Hashem l'kei Yisrael el Achav ben Kulia el Tzidkaya ben Maaseya. Hanaviyim lechem b'shmi, that say prophecy in my name. They were false prophets. Sheker, which is false. That Nebuchadnezzar is going to deal with them. Basically, he's going to kill them. And again, Yirmiyahu was obviously now if Yirmiyahu is alive in this story, so this is towards the end. Must be in the early days of the Jewish exile. So these guys had nothing better to do than to mess with Nebuchadnezzar. So it says, so again, the Gemara says, Kayam Hashem tzvayis l'kei Yisrael Achav ben Kulia v'Tzidkaya ben Maaseya and avim lechem b'shmi l'shaker. V'chsiv, and it says, v'loikech mehem klal l'chol golus Yehuda asher beBavel leimar yisimcha Hashem kitzidkiyahu ka'achav asher kilam melech Bavel be'esh asher sarfam leinemer el asher kilam. So it says that so the pasuk says like this. So the whole pasuk goes like this. It says, "So said the Lord to the hosts, the God of Israel, concerning Achav and Tzidkiyahu, who prophesies my name falsely. And it is written, and of them shall be taken a curse by all the captivity of Judah, that they were kind of taken as an atonement, who are in Babylonia, saying, May the Lord make you like Tzidkiyahu and Achav." They were as a lesson, where the king of Babylonia toasted in fire. So it states that he toasted them, but he didn't burn them. It means toasted is, it says Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan says, like he made them like there's a kind of food that they would kind of it's almost like popcorn, but without the pop. They would boil chitim, wheat seeds. Why? Because they did an avela, they did an abomination. What was the abomination they did? They tried to take the wives of their friends. So it seems like they were people that were acting as an abomination in general with other people's wives. And God made them get a little too confident, and they went after Nebuchadnezzar's daughter. Like I said, they had nothing better to do than to mess with the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar. They come out of it. Maybe they were, in their success, they became oblivious of what's going on. So Ma'avud, also the Gabi Barta de Nebuchadnezzar, they came to the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar. So Achav said as a prophet, again, the Mishrabi looked the part, you know what I mean? They looked like good prophets. So they looked the part, and they said, Achav said, Amala tells the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar, Koyam Hashem, God said so, Hashmi'i Tzidkiyahu, you should be with, it means you should sleep with Tzidkiyahu. And Tzidkiyahu said, Koyam Hashem, the God said, Hishmi al Achav, listen to sleep, that you should sleep to Achav. Means that they wanted both to sleep with the daughter of Nebuchadnezzar. So these, of course, they wrapped it up in holiness and in prophecy. What did she do? I'm not sure what their strategy was here, but either way, what she did is Azlav Amrullah Lavu. She went and told her father, obviously, that wasn't already a good idea. So maybe they thought they would win him over. Amrullah, he said he smelled a rat. Again, Nebuchadnezzar is not stupid, so he says this doesn't make sense. They said, meaning to say that had it been a real prophecy, he may have supported the idea. But he said, that's not godly like a prophecy. God doesn't like these things. He hates inappropriate relationships, zima, znus. So that doesn't mean, I don't trust that these are real prophets. When they come back, send them to me. Why he couldn't send them on his own? I don't know, why couldn't he just right away, send his police to get them? I don't know, but this was his strategy. He said, let them go back to you, and then you can send them to me. So it doesn't say why they went, why they didn't realize this is a trap. He also the Gaba, when they came to try to convince her of their prophecy, Shadrusanu Legabi Avu, she said, go to my dad, my father, Nebuchadnezzar. Amar Luhu Man Amar Lachun. So he said, and Nebuchadnezzar said, who told you this prophecy that my daughter has to sleep with you? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, God said so. No, I'm speaking in the name of God. He says, I asked Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah about this idea that you're suggesting, and they said no, it doesn't. This is forbidden. Amrluhu, so they didn't back down. They said, Ananami Navi, we're also prophets kavisayu like they are. God didn't tell them; He told us. So the prophecy was to us, and therefore it's our prophecy. It's not their prophecy. The very fact that they said it's forbidden has nothing to do with it. There's a prophecy. Amalahu, I know be ina the eve the kinechayhu the new the Hananiah Mishael Azariah. So he trapped him. He says, okay, if you're saying your prophets like them, and it's a prophecy for you and not for them, let's see if you're prophets. I tested them. Let's test you. I tested them. I threw them into the burning furnace. I'm going to throw you into the burning furnace, and if you come out, then we could have a conversation. So he says, so they said, no, you can't test us. Why? They were three. Like I said, they were three. Like a willow, like a hadas. We're only two. And they've said that three is a strong number, that the fire should save them. Three is already a mezuman. So they said, it's not a sign that we're not prophets. It's just that we need three. Okay, not a problem. He wasn't concerned. She goes, choose a third person that you want with you, whoever you want. So they figured who they picked. Now we go back to Yeshua Kohen Gadol. That's why I said we're not sure I wasn't sure where Yeshua Kohen Gadol was by the prophecy, because the prophecy of Zachariah wanted to say that they were in Eretz Yisrael. Here, Yeshua Kohen Gadol is by the story of Achav and this guy Tzidkiyahu. So he says, Amar Yehoshua Kohen Gadol. They figured, let's take Yeshua Kohen Gadol. Savri Lesi Yehoshua Dinafish Chusai. They figured that Yeshua is a tzaddik, and his merit would stand for us. And they protect us. So Achisu, so he took them. Shadnu inu iklu. He threw them into the furnace. They got burnt. Yeshua Kohen Gadol ichruchei ma'anayu. It says that the Hananiah Mishael, the Achav, and they got toasted like kernels. So he says, it says this. They were three, and so he says they said to Yeshua high priest. So he said they took the three of them down, cast them. They were burnt, and Yeshua the high priest, his garments were affected, as it stated, as he showed me Yeshua the high priest standing before the angels of the Lord. So it says, and his clothing were burnt. So we see in the pasuk that Zachariah says, "Vayireni is Yeshua Kohen Gadol, I'm lefnei Ma'al Hashem, v'chsiv Hashem al Satan yigar b'cha." That's when Hashem says to the Satan, he punishes the Satan. So he says, "Yadanit the tzadikayuat." My time anu. So now they got toasted, meaning Achav and Tzidkiyahu, but Yeshua stayed, even though his clothing were affected. So therefore, like I said before, to them it wasn't a meifus. For him, it wasn't a meifus. For him, it was a punishment that his children weren't marrying properly. So he says, and Nebuchadnezzar now calls in Yeshua Kohen Gadol. He says, I see you're a tzaddik. Yadana, it's the tzaddikayuat. I see you're a tzaddik. My time, why did the fire affect you a little bit? And Hananiah Mishael Azariah, they weren't affected at all. Because again, he said there was a concept. They were three banei and I'm only one. So he said, So he said, Avram, 1 second. Avram was one. Why couldn't you be like Avram? Says Hasam have Rishayim Badei. He didn't have Rishayim. Therefore, there was no permission for the fire to do anything. But by me, because the Rishayim, the fire was already doing damage, so it could have damaged my clothing. Hachav Rishayim Badei. There was Rishayim, the wicked false prophets. And therefore, the fire had permission to do damage, and it damaged my clothing. Hanidam Rinchin, then the Gemara says what it says, Trei Oidi Yaveshri, Vechadr Tiva, Oktan, Yavishi Tiva. You have two dry garments and one wet garment. A wet garment, the fire wouldn't affect, but because there's two dry garments and dry garments burn, it also affects the wet garment. That's what people say. So his answer, basically, the Gemara knows his answer is not a real answer. Meaning, there's a few questions we could ask here quickly. We have to finish the class, but there's a few questions we could ask here quickly. Well, number one is, why didn't he say about Avram Avinu to this Achim and Tzidkiah? When they said that they needed three, they were two. So why didn't he say right then that Avram Avinu was one? Second question is that the Gemara doesn't exactly accept this answer. The Gemara doesn't accept that his answer was a real answer. Why? Because he just told it. He didn't want to say the truth to Nebuchadnezzar. But the Gemara says, "My time inish." It was really a punishment. It didn't say that the fire can't affect. My time inish. So Amar Papa says that Shahayu baniv nisuyim nashim she'enu ganis lukuna, because his sons married on inappropriate women. So therefore, he got punished with his clothes being burnt. And his connection to the story means it wasn't he married. He's not responsible for his sons, but he wasn't meicha. He didn't protest. Like it says that in the vision of Yecheskel, Yeshua is wearing dirty clothing, meaning damaged clothing. Is that his way to wear dirty clothing? Because his sons married an inappropriate woman, and he didn't protest. He was quiet when his sons were kind of not behaving, so it affected him as well. Okay, so the question that I asked about why didn't we're stopping here, but why didn't he ask about Avram to these people? So I think one of the answers it says is, the Bach asked this question. Why doesn't he ask when Achav say that there are three? Why didn't he say but Avram was one? So and so he said, and Yaakov says like that they could have answered that Hashem specifically saved Avram because he was one. That Hashem says that Avram is one, and God said that Avram is one, and I'm one. Let the Yachid protect the Yachid. So it was the fact that he was alone protected him. So they were saying, we're not alone, we're two. We're not three like Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Give us a third person. When they gave him a third person, they were punished. Yeshua and Kohen Gadol was saved. Why was he damaged? He said because he wasn't alone. But the real answer was that he wasn't punished. That the reason he was punished was because he didn't discipline his children, basically. Right, everyone? I know this is a little short, then a little fast, but if any questions, now's the time to ask. Otherwise, we shall see you guys next week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take care, Laila Tov, and Chag Sameach to everyone.